Good morning, everybody. We want to welcome you to Spring Conference. We apologize for starting a couple of minutes late, trying to iron out some last-minute technical difficulties. Of course, we can't do this perfectly. If we did do it perfectly, you would think you were someplace else, not at a UPC conference. So anyway, we want to welcome you. Thank you for your patience. For those of you that don't know me, that are new to the prosecution world, I'm Bob Church. I'm the director of the Utah Prosecution Council. To begin with, we want to thank Bill Francis and the Imagination Company for doing this broadcast for us. He's going to do the recording that we will get posted up on our webpage a little bit later, hopefully by next week sometime. I want to thank Layton City for hosting. We're in the Layton City Council chambers. Appreciate Steve Garside and his staff, who are working feverishly right now behind the scenes, getting John and Lance's presentation up and running. To kind of lighten the mood, I know we've got an audience of one right now, but who knew that pop culture was going to predict our future?
You could accept the fact that this city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion.
What do you mean, biblical?
What he means is Old Testament, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff.
Exactly.
Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Okay, so actually, I have a dog and my wife has two cats. So we have been living with dogs and cats living together for some time. What I never thought we would see is that there would be a time when that we could not spare a square.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is kind of embarrassing, but there's no toilet paper over here.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I just forgot to check, so if you could spare some.
No, I'm sorry.
What?
No, I'm sorry, I can't spare it.
You can't spare it?
No, there's not enough to spare.
Well, I don't need much. Just 3 squares will do it.
I'm sorry, I don't have 3 squares now, if you don't mind.
3 squares? You can't spare 3 squares?
No, I don't have a square to spare. I can't spare a square.
Well, is it 2-ply? Because if it's 2-ply, I'll take 1 ply. 1 ply. 1 puny little ply. I'll take 1 measly ply.
Look, I don't have a square and I don't have a ply. No, don't pull, I beg you.
Okay. So hopefully wherever you are at, you've got plenty of squares to spare today. But seriously, we're glad you're with us, and I hope that you guys are staying sane. That's a question I've been asking people. Are you staying sane? So not so much as about staying healthy. So for those of you that are going to watch this later, okay, sorry guys, we've got 2 screens running here. There we go. We're going to be recording this in 60-minute blocks. So for those that come back and watch this after the fact, you don't have to sit through, 11 hours of conference. As I said, we're going to be recording this and posting it to our webpage. We hope to get those up next week. So again, if you're not able to watch the entire conference today and tomorrow, you'll be able to go up to our webpage and pull those up. It's at upc.utah.gov. The restrooms, for those that are here in the audience, out this door, hopefully you all know where your restroom is at home. And lunch, we will not be having chicken fajitas today. It will be whatever you are serving at home. Sorry, that's a joke for Steve Garside, who's sitting here with us. Okay, you can ignore the dates that are on these slides, these next couple of slides. I cut and pasted this from spring 2018. What I want, and this is an old look on our webpage. The reason that I'm pulling this up is I want to make sure that everybody knows where you need to go to log in to do your course evaluations. Is you will go to our webpage. Click on the members link, which is there in the upper left-hand corner. Okay, you will get a drop-down menu, and if you have not signed up as a member on our webpage, it will give you the this member registration. What we ask is that, or what I ask is that when you register, that you use a government email address so that I know that you work for a government agency. If it's a Gmail or a Yahoo, I have to send you an email, confirm that you work for the government, work for a prosecution agency. And depending upon where you work, that will depend on the level of access that you get on our webpage. Okay, there are going to be two places where you can complete your course evaluation. Okay, there we go. One is under that members tab. You'll click on that and it will bring down this evaluations page. When you click on, and that's the first place you can do the evaluation, or you can go over to the training tab and it will bring this drop-down menu and you click on evaluations. Okay, that will then open up the conference evaluation, and if it doesn't default to 2020 Spring Conference, then just click the down arrow and find the appropriate conference and then select it. Okay, so then what will happen there is, just make sure I'm up with everybody, is it brings up the evaluation again. This is from 2018, so you can ignore that. You will give an evaluation for the presenter as well as leave any comments. Well, I want to make sure that everybody understands that that this is completely anonymous. Any comments that you leave are not attached to your name. At the bottom of the screen, there is a submit button and a save progress. The submit button means that you are done evaluating, whereas if you are making comments throughout the course, for each presentation, you want to hit the Save the Progress tab. Okay, let me realize that I'm not caught up with you guys. There we go. Okay, a couple of comments about the course evaluation is you are not going to be able to register, you're not going to be able to complete your evaluation until UPC receives your registration fee. So just be aware that if you are joining us and have not paid, you can watch the video, you can watch the conference, but you're not going to be able to get a course certificate for the CLE. So in other words, like I said, no CLE until you have paid. For those that need to report their CLE this year, we need to have you complete the evaluations by May 31st. In other words, what I'm saying is we will leave the evaluation open for a period of time, but if you need CLE for this reporting year, you need to have it done by May 31st. Okay. For prosecutors, there is an additional survey. What has happened this year is that the legislature is requiring that all agencies that receive state funding, that we report to the legislature how we're doing. UPC, we have to report on 3 areas for this year. So there's going to be 4 questions that we ask covering 3 areas. So the first question that we're going to ask is what percentage of CLE comes from UPC conferences? And there will be 4 options for you to answer. The next question is, in the last 12 months, have you attended a UPC conference or training where you learned about using a trauma expert at trial? You click yes or no. And then if yes, there are additional questions as to how likely you would be to use that trauma expert. The next question we're going to ask is, in the last 12 months, have you attended a UPC conference where you learned about presenting evidence in a case where a victim is unable to participate in the prosecution for any reason? Yes or no? And then again, if yes, how likely are you to go to trial without the participation of the victim in that case? Then the last question is, in the last 12 months, have you prepared a case where you intend to go forward without the participation of the victim? And it's either yes or no. If yes, how many cases? And of those, how many actually went to trial? We're required to report this information by the end of October of this coming year. We realize that our numbers may be skewed. We're just starting this new performance measurement requirement. And so some of you may not attend any of these conferences, and obviously you would respond appropriately. Thank you for being patient as we work through this survey and the CLE evaluation forms. So if you have any questions, concerns, contact either Ron Waite, Marilyn Jasperson, or myself, and there's our contact information. So that is all I have. And so Marilyn, behind the scenes, is going to switch us over to Jeff Buman, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about SWAP.
Good morning, Jeff Buman. I'm the Executive Director of the Statewide Association of Prosecutors and Public Attorneys. This year, I thought I'd take this opportunity to talk a little bit about what SWAP is and what it does for prosecutors. So first of all, who is SWAP? Okay, so SWAP is a 501c4 nonprofit. We have 17 board members, a mixture of city and county attorneys and the Attorney General's office. We have an executive board, which includes Steve Garside, Trish Cassell, Ryan Robinson, and James Swink, who are all city or county attorneys throughout the state. And they have me as a part-time director. SWAP's mission is to advocate the policy for prosecutors and public attorneys in Utah. We also provide leadership on legal and policy issues related to the fair administration of justice or criminal matters and the effective administration of government or civil matters. And we enhance communication among our partners. So what does that mean we actually do? 70% of the time that SWAP spends during the year is spent with the legislature, before, during, and after the session. And when I say SWAP, that's not me, that's a whole large team of prosecutors, including the Salt Lake District Attorney's Office, the Attorney General's Office, city and county attorneys, Utah Prosecution Council to a certain extent. We'll talk about that in a second. CivLAC, which is a number of civil attorneys that work for the county attorneys, and SWAPLAC, which is the criminal deputies and assistant city attorneys working on criminal matters. 15% of our time we spend working with communicating with other organizations, and 15% on policy development like our best practices committee. All right, so when we talk about how we spend that 70% of the time, let me back up a little bit and talk about the differences between SWAP, Bob at UPC, and UCDAA, which is Utah County District Attorneys Association. Many years ago, long before I was a county attorney, there was a split where we decided, and I say we before I was here, that because UPC is funded by legislative dollars, essentially, or at least controlled by the legislature, their funding, that it was not advantageous to have them lobbying as well. So the training arm is controlled by UPC, and the lobbying and policy arm is controlled by SWAP. And then the County and District Attorneys Association have their own organization, which does a number of things, including training and policy. During the session, UPC also helps a little bit with expertise on certain subject matters as we do our lobbying. That's why they're included on that last slide. But during the legislative session, you'll find that almost every bill that we'll review, I think tomorrow, has either been touched in some way or driven or proposed by someone on the SWAP team. And we're talking about dozens and dozens and dozens of bills. But one of the things that you don't see in the spring conferences is what does not happen at legislature. Basically, SWAP spends a lot of time on the defense. A great deal of what we do is trying to protect our ability to effectively manage our offices and to pursue justice in the criminal courts. And that mostly involves a lot of defense work. So in this presentation, I've decided just to pull a few of those things that we did this year that you won't see that really did further the mission of SWAP and help us be able to do our jobs. I have 8 examples that I pulled from this session that I'll talk about briefly. There's many more. The first one, House Bill 288, Prosecutor Data Collection Amendments. This started last year at the end of the session when a legislator proposed a bill that would have drastically changed the way that we operate. It would have provided a great deal of oversight to prosecution offices. Over the interim, we worked with that legislator a great deal, and you'll see tomorrow what resulted is basically a bill that now only collects data from prosecutor offices. And we also got a soft commitment to help us obtain more funding for more e-prosecutor licenses. So essentially, what started out as a very bad bill for prosecutors, we hope will end up as a good bill for us. There we go. Second example, insanity defense. So this is the second session where insanity defense was proposed. This is a bill that would drastically change the ability of defendants to assert that insanity defense, would have broadened it extensively. Furthermore, if passed, it would have overburdened the state hospital's forensic unit and basically removed all of the civil beds that we have access to at the state hospital. So twice now we've been able to defeat that bill during committees, but unfortunately it's been very, very narrow, and that bill will probably come back again. Third example, law enforcement use of biometric information. This bill as proposed would have given a perpetrator basically an absolute right to not provide facial recognition, iris recognition, fingerprint scanning, voice recognition, whatever it is, to a police officer trying to open up an electronic device, even with a warrant. We were able to modify the bill eventually to the point where we were happy with it, but then it never got a hearing. Example 4, child abuse and endangerment amendments. This bill also started out in a manner that would have drastically undermined our ability to basically go after these drug houses where children are found. It would have required us to prove that a child was actually damaged or injured by operation or by the proximity to the drugs, and that would have required us pulling the child out of the house, getting it tested or examined by a medical professional, and we thought that was way too intrusive. We're able to modify that bill extensively, and you'll see tomorrow that now it makes really only minor tweaks, ones that we were happy with. The fifth example, amendments to asset forfeiture. As you all know, asset forfeiture has been churning through the legislature for many, many years, and it's been our ability to do civil asset forfeiture has been greatly eroded over the past 10 or 12 years. Nonetheless, the attacks continue. Really, many advocates that we're opposed to want to just get rid of civil asset forfeiture in its entirety. But it's a tool that we need as prosecutors, and we're working to preserve. So this last year, we spent many, many months working on a compromise bill, one that would have given us some leeway to do some things that are right now prohibited, would have given some, what I would call, some victories to the other side that we thought were mostly eye candy, but the ones that they were seeking were important to them. We thought we got there, but at the very last minute, everything kind of didn't necessarily fall apart, but we just ran out of time. So we'll probably be addressing that again next legislature. But the good news is we still have civil asset forfeiture. Example 6, criminal discovery. At least 2 senators have proposed bills that would really ding prosecutors and police officers during this criminal discovery process. If we made any mistakes, it would have shortened timelines. One of the bills would have provided criminal penalties for prosecutors or police officers who made mistakes, even if they weren't necessarily willful. And we've been able to, so far, keep those proposals and those bills out of the legislature, and they have not been pushed forward yet. But unfortunately, the battle's not over. But we are working to create some best practices with the police departments and internally with prosecutors' offices so we can address some of the concerns at least. Example 7, genetic information amendments. This bill would have greatly curtailed or even prohibited us from obtaining information from private and some public DNA databases. This would have exempted us from getting any access to things like what's called Ancestry.com and those other, there's another one, I can't recall the name. It would have prohibited us from getting access to those, and it would have prohibited our ability to get abandoned DNA evidence, or at least greatly limited that. Again, we're able to defeat that bill before it got a committee hearing, probably coming back again though. And the last example I wanted to give of our defense efforts this last session is facial recognition provisions. This bill would have made Department of Public Safety the only entity authorized to do facial recognition. And we think that was way too narrow. There are many sheriff's offices, for example, who use facial recognition in their jails. And so we're able to defeat that bill before a committee hearing. Again, that one will probably come back as well. And we've already started working with the police agencies on creating some best practices. Now, the few minutes that I had, I just highlighted some defensive efforts, but there are things that we want to work on that will proactively or affirmatively help us do a better job as we prosecute our cases. So if you have an idea, you see a current law that needs to be tweaked, you see a policy that needs to be implemented, I would encourage you to reach out, starting with your whoever your boss may be, a county attorney, a city attorney, attorney general, and make sure that they're on board with your idea, because if they're not, a lot of times that will kill it before it gets moving. And then either draft what you think the law should be or should say, or the modifications should be, or at least describe in writing what you think the change needs to be. And then contact your representative on the SWAP board, or you can contact myself. My contact information is there on the screen, and we'll be happy to work on it. Our job is to make criminal prosecution better. Our job is to make things better for victims, defendants, prosecutors, and the public. If you have ideas that you think will support that goal, feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So what we're going to do, before I tell you what we're going to do, let me just make sure that everybody got a copy of the agenda. If not, you can go to our webpage, the spring training page, and you can download it. We're going to be pretty good about following the agenda. As it will show you, we're going to take 15-minute breaks every hour, just like we would a normal conference, so you can get up, go to the bathroom, cup of coffee, orange juice, whatever. So it's 8:57. We've got about 3 minutes. What we need to do is to swap out the presentations and get Jeff and, John and Lance spun up. And then we'll get started at 9. We'll go to 10, a break at 10 o'clock and there on after. So thank you for bearing with us. Thank you for being patient. And we will get started in just a couple minutes.